Today's episode is brought to you by Modern Grower. Modern Grower is the go-to source for 100% organic, GMO-free microgreen seeds. Trusted by hundreds of growers for high quality and low prices. If you're growing microgreens, start saving at shop.moderngrower.co.
Can you talk about some of the trials that they've done and any results that you're aware of from those trials?
Yeah, I'll give one that I'm very aware of, and this is a university research. It's Washington State with a researcher that's now moved over to Montana. But they've done multi-year trials with biochar that they produce themselves using a flame cap kiln, which is one way to create the pyrolytic environment. And this was on organic farms on the San Juan Islands. Anecdotally, I had heard prior to seeing this research that biochar inhibits the leaching of nutrients, especially in the Northwest where we get substantial rains. Nutrients in the wintertime will leach from the soils. So what this research was, they put the biochar in control, where they had control, and then with biochar that was charged using beneficial microbes and seawater and different things. And under the root zone of the plants, and they were growing dry beans, under the root zone, they installed these little capsules that would measure NPK. And after the growing season, when they measured the amounts of NPK that had leached through the plants and through the root zone down to below the root zone, they found that the plants that had biochar had between 30 and 40% less NPK. So that was retained in the biochar in the root zone.
It wasn't making its way down to the capsule.
It wasn't making its way down to the capsule. It wasn't leaching out. And that was the first time, it may have been done before, but that's the first time that I saw university research, and it's Washington State, not Washington State, University of Washington research that quantified this. They've continued to do several, they've done like 3 years worth of research and showing different, over years, the greater benefit that one gets. So that's one. As a citizen scientist research, I was personally involved with a tomato grower here locally on the North Olympic Peninsula, just outside of Port Townsend. And 1 year, he agreed to do some trials with some biochar. He grows all his plants in 20-gallon pots in a greenhouse, all his tomatoes. And so he was willing to dedicate 4 pots to biochar mixtures with 4 different varieties of tomatoes. The first season, we charged the biochar, just simple. I charged it with worm tea for about a week, just mixed it, stirred it in, and we put that in the soil mix at a 10% mixture. The results the first year after we were done, and I let, again, being citizen science, I let the tomato grower, we talked of how he wanted to do it. In this first year, he treated both plants. He put the same amount of moisture, the same amount of nutrients, fertilizer, for both the control and the biochar enhanced. At the end of the season, we looked at the results, and he measures the results by number of fruit. He doesn't weigh them. And he said, I really didn't see any change. So let's revisit this next year if we're going to do what we're going to do. So the next year we came in and said, okay, so if we're going to do it, let's really stress the biochar plants. What he did in the control, he changed the entire soil. He took out the old, put in new. I said, in the biochar one, let's leave it exactly. We just took out the plant, shook off all the soil from the roots, and left it in there. We could still see the biochar there. And what the intention was to give it 50% less water and no fertilizer through the entire growing season. Being citizen scientist, and he has volunteers come in, it was not 50% less, but it was substantially less, at least 40, probably 40% less. And nutrients through the course of the growing season, it got fertilized a couple of times, but much less than what his normal protocols are. When that season was over, he showed across the 4 different varieties of tomatoes a 17% increase in yield. And the biggest thing he had was no blossom end rot, which is important for tomato growers. So he said, when he looked at that, he said, I'm going to need to really reevaluate. I've been doing the best. Unfortunately, he sold a tomato farm we haven't considered, but that was an example. Another organic farmer that I work with that uses a different biochar, but he was originally from Wisconsin and he was familiar with biochar from in Wisconsin. He grows all his tomatoes at his farm using biochar. Well, at our local farmers market, and this isn't big research, but they do a blind taste test of tomatoes. And his tomatoes won, I believe it was 3 out of the 4 categories for taste. And when I talked to Max about this, Max said, I said, why do you think that is? He says, I think it has to do, tomatoes are besides the nutrients, tomatoes are very susceptible to the amount of moisture. And the biochar gives them a constant moisture. So they don't run through that cycle of a lot of water, less water, a lot of water, less water. It's constant. So those are a few examples of research, both university research and citizen scientists.
If you enjoy farm podcasts, then tune into Carrot Cash Flow for all things farm business. Join us as we explore the latest trends, tips, and stories from market farmers running businesses just like yours. Whether you're a seasoned farmer or just starting out, our podcast has something for everyone. Listen in and grow with us. Available on all major podcast platforms. Don't miss out. Subscribe to Carrot Cash Flow today.